My name is Navia Reyes. I'm 28, and this is the story of how a man I loved looked me in the eye, weighed my worth against a job title, and said I wasn't attractive anymore. Before that sentence, we were the stable couple. People said it about us like a label, as if stability were a single photograph. 2 toothbrushes in the same cup, 1 set of keys in a dish by the door, meal prep containers stacked like Tetris in the fridge. I worked as a software developer, good pay, long hours, clean hands, and a tired brain. Evan Carter was 30, all polished shoes and ambition slicked charm, a sales manager who could fold a room into his pocket with a smile. We split the bills with a precision that made us proud. He loved to say we were a power duo, and I used to believe him. 2 months ago, 2 things happened in the same week, and everything tipped. The first was my grandfather, Mateo Reyes, the quiet kind of great. His hands always smelled like cedar and orange peel, and he could make broken things remember what they were. If there's an image that lives under my ribs, it's him fixing a jammed window in my first apartment, tapping the sash and murmuring, "Everything opens with patience, mija." He built a small property portfolio from nothing, decades of paint-splattered coveralls and late rent checks, of replacing boilers at midnight and arguing with city inspectors at dawn. He called himself a glorified janitor and grinned, but the keys jangling on his belt sounded like independence. He died on a Sunday morning, the kind that starts quiet and never finds a voice. My aunt's text came in with too many heart emojis, as if grief needed decorations. I drove to his house and stood in his kitchen like a ghost, touching the worn groove on the table where he'd rest his elbow. The world narrowed to small tasks. Funeral arrangements, the obituary draft with the typo. I corrected 3 times because I couldn't control anything else. Evan held my hand at the service. He mouthed, "I'm here," but his thumb kept stopping to check the buzz of his phone in his pocket. I noticed. I forgave it. I was tired enough to forgive anything. 5 days later, the second thing happened. I went back to work because moving through code is the only way I know to make chaos quiet. At 11:07 a.m., my manager messaged me a calendar invite. Quick sync. There is nothing quick about a voice that can't look you in the eye. He said company-wide restructuring, market headwinds, and this isn't about your performance. He said I was impacted, like a storm had blown through, and I was just a tree that didn't bend fast enough. He gave me a packet, 2 weeks severance, and a number for a career coach named Paula, who had a smile in her email signature. I walked to my car and sat with my hands on the wheel, forehead against the cool seam where the glass meets the door. I imagined telling my grandfather, hearing the soft click of his tongue, the practical questions he'd ask. How much runway? What expenses can you cut? What do you need from me? And then I remembered the quiet house that would never ask again. When I got home, the light in our living room slanted across the floorboards and made everything look more expensive than it was. Evan was at the kitchen island, laptop open, calendar blocks like a mosaic of importance. I said his name and my voice didn't sound like me. He looked up, smiled, and then the smile folded when he saw my face. "What happened?" he asked. "I got laid off." I set the packet on the counter like a thing you find on the sidewalk and can't decide to keep or throw away. The whole team. Restructuring. He was very still for exactly 1 breath. Then he nodded, slow, thoughtful, like I'd told him traffic was bad on 6th. "Wow," he said. "Okay." He closed the laptop halfway, not all the way. What do you need?" A hug, I thought, a joke, a plan. A minute to feel like the floor wasn't moving. "Nothing yet," I said out loud, because my pride is a careful thing. We ate dinner like people on a date, trying to impress each other with composure. He asked if I'd apply to the companies he admired. He listed them by prestige. I said yes. I meant, I'll try to breathe. That night, he fell asleep fast, the way men do when they believe someone else is keeping watch. I lay awake and counted the whirring hums of the refrigerator until they calmed me. In the afternoon, I got a call from Mr. Adler, my grandfather's lawyer. He'd handled Mateo's affairs since before I was born. His voice was the sound of paper sliding into a folder. "Navia," he said, "I know it's soon, but we should discuss your grandfather's estate." The words estate and grandfather tried to sit together in my head and couldn't find chairs. I took notes anyway. He said more than I could hold. Trusts, valuations, rental income, a portfolio that was surprisingly robust. He quoted an initial number that didn't make sense, as if he were joking and forgot to laugh. He advised me not to make big decisions until probate concluded. He reminded me confidentiality is a kind of kindness to yourself. When I hung up, I went to the bathroom and stared at my face. I looked exactly like a woman who needed to water the plant by the window. Nothing about me suggested a number with that many zeros. I pressed my palms to the sink and said to the mirror, "Don't tell Evan yet, not because you want to test him, because grief doesn't need witnesses." The next evening, he asked me to sit. He'd made spaghetti, heavy on garlic like he does when he wants something. The steam fogged my glasses and I took them off, wiping with the corner of a dish towel. "We need to talk," Evan said. He did not make eye contact. He watched a point somewhere to the left of my shoulder, like there was a camera there. I've been thinking a lot since everything. And it's just... He gestured with his fork toward my open laptop at the end of the counter where the job boards glowed, work reduced to cards and filters. "This is tough to say." "Say it," I said. He full-faced me then, a little stage smile he used in sales decks. "You're not... It's like... I'm attracted to ambition, to momentum, you know? To success." He exhaled, relieved by the prettiness of his own phrasing. "Right now, this, again, the gesture toward LinkedIn, toward my bare feet on the tile, this isn't attractive. You aren't attractive to me anymore." For a second, the apartment tilted like a ship my body had to right. I set my glass down and watched the condensation print a circle on the counter. The circle grew slowly, as if timing itself to my pulse. I could have argued. I could have listed all the invisible work that keeps a life smooth. Calling to fight incorrect medical bills, changing the air filter before it clogs, remembering his mother's birthday, syncing schedules so we don't overspend. I could have said attraction is not a resume bullet. I could have told him about Mr. Adler and a number that made the walls feel too small. Instead, something inside me clicked softly, the sound of a locked door accepting a key. My grandfather's voice moved through me. "Everything opens with patience, mija." "Okay," I said. My voice surprised me. It didn't crack. It wore heels. Evan blinked. "Okay." "You've made your decision." I pushed my chair back, the legs scuffing the floor we installed together, and promised not to scratch. "Bye then." He stared at me, waiting for the scene where I cry in the kitchen. Ask him how to be more desirable. Ask him to stay while I become someone shinier. The silence stretched between us, tight as a violin string. A muscle ticked in his jaw, the first real thing I saw on his face all day. "That's it?" he said, a little incredulous laugh stitched through the words. "After 3 years? That's all?" "What else is there?" I asked. "Do you want a monologue?" I picked up my plate and took it to the sink, rinsed the fork as the water ran warm over my fingers. That small domestic sound seemed to humiliate him more than a scream. He left his bowl untouched, stood, and paced the length of the island like a caged possibility. "I'll pack my things," he said finally, businesslike. "I'm not a villain here, Navia. I'm being honest." "Honesty is what people try on when kindness doesn't fit," I said, not loud. "The guest room closet is empty." He threw clothes into boxes the way you yank weeds, mean and fast. The apartment became a percussion line of drawers and doors, his irritation thumping a rhythm where love used to be. He paused at the door with a small theatrical sigh, the kind that asks for a spotlight. "I hope you get back on your feet," he said, sympathy painted on like a fresh coat over a cracked wall. "I will," I said. It was the truest sentence in the room. When the door clicked behind him, the silence turned from loud to clean. I stood very still and let it wash me. Then I called Mr. Adler and said, "It's just me now. Please send whatever I need to sign." He said he was sorry, for my loss, not for my liberation. He reminded me again, document everything, separate finances, no contact unless necessary. I took screenshots of our shared accounts, froze what needed freezing, changed what needed changing. My hands moved while my heart caught up. Later, I sat by the window with my grandfather's worn flannel draped over my shoulders. The city glittered like it had rehearsed for me. Somewhere down the block, a siren wound itself thin, then quiet. I tried to cry and couldn't, not yet. There's a certain kind of cruelty that cauterizes. It hurts later when you think you're safe. On my phone, I opened the last photo I took of my grandfather, the one where he's pretending to be annoyed that I made him smile. He looks into the lens like he's looking through time. "You'll know their worth when you have nothing left to give," he'd said to me once, handing me a key I didn't need, just to see if I'd keep it safe. I fell asleep on the couch with the flannel bunched under my cheek and woke to a text from the credit card company. Unusual charge detected. $5,000 at luxury retailer. A joint card, for emergencies only, still listed under both our names. My mouth tasted like old garlic and something bitter that wasn't the spice. I reported it stolen, canceled the card, and saved the confirmation email in a folder labeled Boundaries. I sent Evan a screenshot, assuming this was a mistake, reported as fraud. His reply arrived before the typing bubble finished forming. "It's my card too. You can't just cut me off. I need things." I archived the thread, forwarded it to Mr. Adler, and set the phone face down, screen black as a closed door. The apartment held its breath with me. In the glass pane, my reflection looked back, eyes swollen, hair stubborn, mouth set. I pressed my palm to the cool window. The city didn't blink. "I will get back on my feet," I whispered to the empty room, and this time I meant it like a promise. Somewhere, a key I couldn't see turned in a lock. Something opened. The next morning, sunlight broke through the blinds like a soft interrogation. My apartment looked the same. 2 mugs on the counter, his side of the bed still dented, but the air had changed. It was lighter, quieter. I stood in the kitchen barefoot, staring at the boxes Evan had left behind. He'd taken what mattered to him: the watch collection, the expensive sneakers, the framed degree he never stopped bragging about. What he didn't take were the small things that mattered to me: the chipped blue mug my grandfather bought at a flea market, the plant we rescued from a sidewalk sale, my favorite sweater he always said looked too simple. Funny how the things people leave behind say more about them than the things they take. I made coffee, black, no sugar. It tasted sharper that way. I opened my phone to a string of messages from Evan, paragraphs that started with "you overreacted" and ended with "we can talk when you calm down." I scrolled through them once, twice, and then deleted the whole thread. My thumb didn't even shake. The next call I made was to Mr. Adler. He answered on the second ring, his tone steady, like someone who's seen too many human stories go sideways. "Navia," he said, "I was expecting you." We talked about logistics, closing accounts, securing assets, and freezing anything joint. He advised me to document everything, even screenshots of messages. His last sentence lingered. "People rarely show their worst side until they lose access to something they think belongs to them." He was right. That afternoon, Evan showed me exactly who he was. At 2:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. $5,000 charged at a luxury boutique, a joint emergency card. My jaw tightened. I didn't even call him. I just opened the banking app, marked the charge as fraud, and shut the card down. 5 minutes later, a text appeared. "Evan, that was my card too. You can't just cut me off. I needed things." Me. No reply. I took a screenshot, sent it to Mr. Adler, and closed my phone. The silence that followed felt like power. The next few days passed in slow motion. I started sorting my life like a stranger had left it to me. Closets, drawers, emails. Every object became a decision. Keep, donate, delete. The hardest part wasn't what I lost, but what I realized I'd carried for too long. His ambitions disguised as our future. His expectations wrapped in advice. His validation that came only when I looked like someone he could brag about. When I found one of his old colognes on the dresser, I almost threw it out. But instead, I uncapped it, inhaled once, and whispered, "Goodbye." Then I poured it down the sink. By the end of the week, the apartment smelled like citrus cleaner and space. That Friday, I went to the lawyer's office to finalize the inheritance paperwork. The number Mr. Adler read out loud made the room tilt. It didn't feel real. 7 digits that could buy freedom and forgiveness at once. He smiled slightly. "Your grandfather believed in you, Miss Reyes. He left you more than money. He left you time." Time, the one thing I thought I'd lost. That night, I opened my grandfather's old journal, the one I hadn't been able to touch since the funeral. Between his neat handwriting and grocery lists, I found a note addressed to me. "You don't owe anyone proof of your worth. The people meant to stay will see it without the price tag." I folded the page and tucked it into my wallet. 3 days later, Evan tried again. He called from a new number. When I didn't answer, he left a voice message that started with, "Hey, can we be adults about this? and ended with, "You're being petty, Navia." Then came another text. Evan, I invested 3 years of my life in you. You could at least help me out until I get settled. Evan, it's not about money, it's about respect. Evan, don't make this ugly. I smiled. There it was, the arrogance of someone who thought I'd never walk away. He didn't know that I was no longer trying to get back on my feet. I was already standing. Weeks passed. I spent my mornings running, my afternoons learning how to breathe again. The first paycheck from my grandfather's estate came through, rental income from properties I hadn't even seen yet. It felt strange, like inheriting someone else's heartbeat. I made a quiet promise. I'd honor him by building, not by boasting. I met with real estate agents, explored listings, and finally found it. A penthouse overlooking the skyline, glass walls that turned the whole city into a painting. The first time I stood in that empty space, I closed my eyes and heard my grandfather's voice. Everything opens with patience, mija. So I opened a new life. New furniture, new walls, new silence, the kind that doesn't ache anymore. One evening, I sat cross-legged on the hardwood floor, surrounded by unpacked boxes and city lights spilling through the windows. I took a photo, a half-full glass of whiskey beside me, the skyline glowing like 1,000 possibilities. I captioned it simply, "New Chapter." I didn't tag the location. I didn't need to. The view spoke for itself. It took less than an hour. Someone from our old circle must have seen it and forwarded it. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. 4 words. I miss us. I stared at the message for a long time, my reflection glowing faintly in the glass. It wasn't me he missed. It was the lifestyle he thought he threw away. I didn't reply. I just smiled, took a screenshot, and whispered to myself, "Patience, mija," because the best revenge isn't loud. It's living quietly, beautifully, without them. The first night in the penthouse didn't feel like triumph. It felt like silence testing me. Every sound echoed, my footsteps, the hum of the refrigerator, even the clink of my glass against the counter. The space was too large for one person, too polished to belong to someone who'd spent years budgeting for mid-range furniture. But by morning, something inside me shifted. The view from my window, the city stretching out in soft fog, reminded me that I didn't owe anyone modesty for surviving. My grandfather didn't work his whole life for me to apologize for inheriting his dream. So I decided to build again, not just a home, but a version of myself that existed beyond heartbreak. I hired a designer named Sophia Tran, sharp bob, quiet confidence, eyes that missed nothing. When she asked what style I wanted, I said, peaceful, but with teeth. She smiled and nodded like she understood exactly what that meant. Together, we built something that looked like serenity and felt like strength. Warm wood, open light, velvet gray sofas, and a wall of books I hadn't read yet. The sound of hammers and drills became my new heartbeat. Every nail in the wall felt like reclaiming something that used to belong to Evan's approval. By the second week, I started laughing again. Small bursts at first. I laughed when Sophia tripped over a paint bucket, when the movers called me boss, when I realized the coffee maker cost more than my first car. Little by little, the grief loosened its hold. I posted again, not for show, for closure. A photo of my living room bathed in gold sunset, captioned simply, "Grateful." The likes trickled in, a few from colleagues, some from family, and one from a mutual friend who still followed Evan. That's all it took. By midnight, my phone buzzed again. "Evan, you moved already? That's fast." Evan, "Looks nice. You finally got your dream apartment, huh?" Evan, "Can we talk?" I locked the screen. It buzzed again. Evan, "Navia, please, I messed up. I panicked. Can we just have coffee?" I didn't even open it. I screenshotted the preview, saved it in the same folder as before, boundaries. Then I went to bed and slept without dreaming. A week later, Jenna, one of Evan's friends, messaged me on Instagram. "He's been miserable. I know you're mad, but maybe just talk to him. People make mistakes." I stared at her profile photo. A beach selfie, wind in her hair, a caption about positivity. I almost felt sorry for her. People like Jenna don't mean harm. They just can't imagine love without forgiving the unforgivable. I blocked her. Instead of responding, I started building something that did deserve my attention. I reconnected with 3 old coworkers, people who'd been laid off the same day I was. We met over coffee, laughed about how we'd once survived on instant noodles and office vending machine snacks. By the end of that meeting, we decided to start a small software consulting group. Lean, local, ours. It felt good. Not glamorous, not flashy, but real. We called it Rintec after my grandfather's initials, Mateo Reyes Navia Reyes. Our first project came from a small real estate firm, one that happened to manage several of my grandfather's properties. It felt like life was quietly closing a perfect loop. Every night after work, I'd pour myself a drink, turn off the lights, and watch the skyline. I'd scroll through interior design sites, add art pieces to my cart, play old jazz records on a Bluetooth speaker. The quiet no longer scared me. It was mine. Then one Friday, I was arranging flowers on the coffee table when my phone lit up again. Unknown number. A single line. "You look incredible. Dinner?" No name, but I knew the rhythm of that kind of ego. I blocked it instantly. 2 days later, I went to a charity gala my grandfather used to support, his name still etched on the donor wall. I wore a silver gown, the kind that made people whisper and pretend they weren't. The event coordinator introduced me as Mr. Reyes's granddaughter. The phrase made me smile. For the first time, it didn't feel like a shadow I was standing under. It felt like a foundation I was standing on. As I was leaving the gala, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned, and there he was. Evan. Perfect suit. Same cologne I'd poured down the sink. Same carefully curated smile that once melted me. "Navia," he said, voice low, pretending to sound casual. "Wow, you look—" "Don't," I cut him off softly. "Don't finish that sentence." He blinked, disarmed. "Can we just talk 2 minutes, please?" I tilted my head. "About what? You already gave me your verdict." He glanced around, noticing the eyes on us, the expensive decor, the fact that I now belonged in a room he didn't control. "I made a mistake," he said finally. "I freaked out when you lost your job. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just didn't want to be with someone who wasn't winning," I finished for him. His jaw tightened. "That's not fair." "Neither was calling me unattractive while I was grieving," I said, my tone calm, surgical. "But I guess fairness was never your strong suit." He looked at me, the silence heavy between us. "You've changed," he muttered. I smiled. "That's what healing looks like." And before he could reply, I walked away. When I got home that night, the city lights were softer somehow. The skyline looked like forgiveness. Distant, quiet, unreachable. I took a photo of the view again. This time I captioned it, "Freedom looks good on me." Then I posted it, not for him, for me, to mark the moment the past finally stopped following me. The morning after the gala, my inbox looked like a battlefield. Evan's name was everywhere. Texts, emails, even a voicemail that started with "just hear me out" and ended with a choked "I miss you." It was almost cinematic. If I hadn't lived through it, I might have rolled my eyes. I sat at my kitchen island, coffee in hand, sunlight spilling across marble. The same man who told me I wasn't attractive anymore now couldn't stand the thought of me outgrowing him. That's the thing about men like Evan. They don't want you. They just don't want you to be fine without them. He tried every angle. "Evan, you know me, Navia. I panicked." "Evan, you're punishing me, and I get it. But can we please talk like adults?" "Evan, it wasn't about money. I just didn't know how to handle everything at once." Then the guilt trip. "Evan, I gave you 3 years of my life. The least you can do is answer one call." I didn't. Instead, I took screenshots, saved them in the boundaries folder, and poured myself another cup of coffee. By Wednesday, it wasn't just him anymore. His mother emailed me from her work account. "Evan's been a mess. Whatever happened between you two, surely you can talk it through. You're such a good influence on him." Then came Jenna again. "Navia, I know you hate me for taking his side before, but he's changed. He's seeing a therapist. He talks about you all the time." And the one that made me laugh out loud, Evan's sister, who I'd met twice at family dinners. Don't throw away something real over pride. People make mistakes. Pride. That word stuck to me like static. Because they didn't see the night he told me I wasn't attractive while I was grieving. They didn't hear the way he said it, as if ambition were a perfume I could reapply. They only saw what I had now, and assumed I'd become too proud to forgive. No one ever questions the pride of the man who leaves, only the woman who refuses to go back. That Friday, I decided I'd had enough of ghost messages and whispers. I put on my best charcoal dress, tied my hair up, and met some friends for dinner at Allegro, the kind of restaurant with live music and soft lighting that made everyone look like a secret. Halfway through dessert, I heard a voice behind me. Familiar, confident, rehearsed. "Navia." I looked up, fork still in hand. "Evan." "Of course." He wore the same brand of suit he used to brag about buying on sale, the one he said made him look executive. But something was off. The tie was loose, the hair not perfectly styled, the eyes searching too much. "Fancy seeing you here," he said, forcing a smile, his hand resting on my shoulder as if we were still his idea of a couple. My friends froze, all conversation evaporating. They knew the story, every brutal detail. "Evan," I said evenly, not moving. "You're interrupting." "Just for a minute," he insisted, ignoring my tone. "Privately?" "No." His smile flickered. "Come on, Navia, don't do this here." "Here's fine," I said, still calm. "You wanted honesty, remember?" He exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "I made a mistake, okay? I was scared. You lost your job. I panicked. I said things I didn't mean." The words rolled out smoothly, like a script he'd practiced. "Did you mean them?" I asked, "when I didn't have money? Or do you not mean them now that I do?" A few nearby tables went silent. Someone at the bar glanced over. Evan's jaw clenched. "That's not fair," he said quietly. "Neither was calling me unattractive after a funeral," I said. His face twisted. "You think you're better than me now, don't you?" I smiled. Small, controlled. "No, just free from you." The quiet around us thickened. He shifted, embarrassed, glancing at my friend's stares. "You've changed," he muttered. "I grew up," I said, pushing my chair back. "You should try it." He reached for my wrist, not harshly, but desperate. "Don't walk away, please. 3 years can't just end like this." I looked down at his hand, then at him. "You're right. They ended the night you called me unattractive. Everything after that was just the echo." I pulled my hand free, turned, and left him standing there, face pale, lips half open, eyes caught between anger and disbelief. Behind me, one of my friends whispered, "That was legendary." I just smiled faintly and said, "No, that was overdue." The next day, my phone blew up. "Jenna, you humiliated him in public. He was just trying to apologize." "Evan, you didn't have to do that in front of everyone. You've changed, Navia. You're cruel now." Cruel. Another word women wear for refusing to perform forgiveness. I muted them all. That weekend, I posted another photo. My new car in the parking garage, sleek and black, headlights reflecting the city skyline. Caption, "Freedom has 4 wheels." The comments poured in. Heart emojis, congrats, questions about the model. Somewhere out there, I knew Evan saw it. I didn't post for him, but I didn't mind if he read between the lines. And comédie. A few weeks later, the universe gave me the kind of plot twist even I couldn't have written. A man named Marcus Hanley called me. Calm voice, slight hesitation. "Hi," he said. "I'm not sure if this is weird, but I think we need to talk. It's about Evan Carter." I straightened. "Go on." He took a breath. "I'm his friend." "Well, I was. We met about a month ago. He told me a story about his ex, you, and how you had a gambling problem, lost everything, and left him in debt. He said you were unstable." I almost laughed. "Creative," I said. "Go on." "Yeah," Marcus continued, voice tightening. "I believed him at first, helped him out, paid a few of his bills. Then I saw an article, local real estate section, about a new penthouse owner. You, full name, photo. It didn't match what he'd told me." "So you put it together," I said softly. "Exactly. I confronted him this morning. He tried to spin it, but it was obvious. He's been lying to everyone, using people. I kicked him out." There was a pause. "I'm sorry you had to deal with that kind of person," Marcus said. "If it helps, you saved me a lot of time and probably a lot of money." I thanked him, hung up, and stared out the window for a long time. I didn't feel victorious. I felt peaceful, because I didn't have to lift a finger. The truth did all the work. The call from Marcus stayed with me. Not because of the gossip, but because of the quiet irony of it all. Evan had spent months trying to rewrite history, casting himself as the victim, painting me as the ungrateful one who'd fallen apart. And yet, there he was, exposed by the same lies he used to define me. I didn't tell anyone about the call. Not my friends, not even my lawyer. Some things are better left to the wind. I'd spent too much of my life defending myself in conversations that didn't deserve my breath. That night, I poured a glass of wine and sat by the window. The city lights shimmered below, like scattered embers of every version of myself I'd shed. For the first time in months, I wasn't replaying the breakup. I wasn't reliving the insult. I wasn't thinking about him at all. It was strange, realizing how quiet healing can be. 3 days later, Jenna posted a photo. Her and Evan at a rooftop bar. Same old smirk, same designer watch, same shallow confidence that fooled people before. The caption read, "Some people are worth second chances." I didn't like or comment. I didn't care. But 2 days after that, the photo was gone. Deleted. Later that week, Marcus texted again. Marcus. "You were right about him. He was using Jenna too." Marcus. "He's been asking around for money again. I think he's burned every bridge he had." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The universe has a way of balancing its own books. Around that time, I visited one of my grandfather's old buildings, a modest 3-story complex with ivy crawling up the bricks. I hadn't been there in years. The property manager, an older woman named Mrs. Hughes, greeted me with a warm smile and a stronger handshake than I expected. "Mateo would be proud," she said. "He always said you were the sharp one." We walked the grounds, peeling paint, uneven steps, and tenants who waved politely from their balconies. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. The foundation of everything my grandfather built. When we reached the courtyard, I stopped in front of the old bench where I used to sit with him as a kid, feeding stray cats he pretended to dislike. The wood was cracked now, the metal rusted. "Can we restore this?" I asked. Mrs. Hughes smiled. "Of course." It wasn't just a bench, it was a promise that I'd keep what mattered and let the rest rot away. That evening, as I was leaving the property, I saw Evan. He was standing across the street, no car, no jacket, just him. Smaller somehow, like time had taken back the inches he borrowed. "Navia!" he called out. I turned, but didn't move closer. "I just want to talk," he said, raising his hand slightly. "Please." "Why?" I asked. "You've already told enough stories about me." His face paled. "Marcus called you." I nodded once. He rubbed his temples, his voice cracking. "I was stupid, okay? I was angry, embarrassed. I didn't want people to think you dumped me. I didn't think it'd matter." "It matters when you use someone else's reputation to cover your own failures," I said. He took a step closer, desperation leaking through his voice. I know. I miss you, Navia. I miss how you made me feel. I can't fix the past, but maybe we can." "Stop," I said quietly. He froze. I walked toward him slowly, every step steady, deliberate. "You don't miss me," I said. "You miss the version of yourself that looked better standing next to me." He blinked, his mouth opening but no words coming out. "I built my peace without you," I continued, "and I'm not trading it for nostalgia." His eyes darted away, his voice breaking. "You really don't care anymore, do you?" I shook my head. Caring isn't the same as returning. He laughed bitterly, half smile twisting. "You know what? You're right. You did change. Money made you cold." "Maybe," I said softly, "or maybe being burned made me stop offering warmth to people who don't deserve it." And with that, I walked away. He didn't follow. That night, I sat in my penthouse, lights low, the city stretching out like a confession. My phone buzzed once, a message from an unknown number. "Evan, I'll always regret what I did." I didn't reply. I took a screenshot, saved it under the same folder, Boundaries, then powered off my phone. There was no satisfaction left in the silence, no bitterness, no triumph, just stillness. He'd been the storm. I'd learned how to be the calm that followed. The next morning, I framed something. Not a photo, not a quote. Just a simple screenshot of that first text. "I miss us." Under it, I typed the words, "Lesson learned." I hung it inside my closet door where no one else could see. A reminder, not of heartbreak, but of how much quieter life becomes when you stop answering noise. 6 months later, the penthouse no longer felt like a symbol. It felt like home. Mornings began with light spilling across the hardwood and the smell of coffee instead of anxiety. The consulting company, Rintech, had grown from a 4-person experiment into something steady. Every project came with a quiet echo of my grandfather's lesson. Build what lasts. On my desk sat his old keyring, heavy with memories. I kept it there as a paperweight, a reminder that everything I touched was once his dream, handed forward. Sometimes, when the wind hit just right, I'd walk the balcony barefoot. The city below murmured, a living organism that didn't care who was winning or losing. It just was. Evan's name hadn't crossed my screen in months. Jenna's friend requests stopped. Even gossip had moved on. What lingered was peace, a slow, golden thing that didn't ask for an audience. One afternoon, I visited my grandfather's grave with fresh marigolds. The stone was cool beneath my fingertips. "I think you'd like what I've done," I whispered. A breeze tugged my hair, soft and approving. I told him about Rintech's first big client, about the restoration of the bench, about how I'd learned to drink my coffee black because sweetness was overrated. Then I laughed, a real from the stomach laugh. On the drive back, I realized I hadn't thought about Evan once until that moment. And even then, it wasn't anger, it was gratitude. He'd pushed me into a version of myself I might never have met otherwise. That night, I invited my team to the penthouse for dinner. We toasted with cheap wine and loud laughter, the kind that filled every empty corner. Sophia stopped by to drop off a new art piece, an abstract skyline in muted golds. "It's you," she said, calm but unbreakable. I hung it above the sofa. It fit. Later, alone, I poured a final glass of whiskey and stood at the window. The city pulsed beneath me, alive, forgiving, indifferent. My phone buzzed once, a calendar reminder I'd forgotten to delete. Anniversary dinner, 8 p.m. I smiled, turned it off, and let the quiet settle. "He taught me to build things that last," I murmured, raising the glass toward the skyline, "and to let go of what doesn't." The reflection in the glass was different now. No trace of the girl who measured her worth by someone else's admiration. I took one last look at the framed screenshot on my closet door before bed. I miss us. It no longer stung. It was just proof that once I survived. Lights out, peace in. A new chapter written, not for revenge, not for closure, but for living.